Greg Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. We expect good comments. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Hello, Aaron. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Frank. How are you today?
I feel like it's like one of those days where it's a non-starter, then it's a starter, then it's a non-starter, then it's a starter.
I get that feeling sometimes too.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to read something. You ever wake up in the too early in the morning, and then you make the mistake of opening your telephone and looking on Facebook?
Yes, frequently.
And I do it, and every so often I'll see something and I'll go, I want to write about that. So today I wrote about Thanksgiving. It is Friday of the long weekend to celebrate giving thanks and being thankful. History is full of moments in time to overcome mistakes, errors, misdeeds, and of course misfortune. Are there ones that can't be borne? All of them and everything to this point begs the question, why be thankful? Survival for the purpose of love, passion, and community? Does what we have guarantee anything? Even if the community is small and irrelevant, being thankful or not is what drives or grinds us to a halt. It can be a decision to those who feel that decisions have to be made for them. Ears to minds and hearts are out there. Trust, there is no need to be alone. I am thankful for every kindness given and received. So, happy Thanksgiving. So I woke up and then all of a sudden I felt like writing something, and that took me about 15 minutes. You know, when you
Well
feel
done.
like, it's not about the well done. It's about the point that I want to make is that there are thoughts that arrive in your head suddenly, and they're very clear. I'm not talking about the thoughts you have after doing an ounce of weed and you think it all makes sense. Not that kind of thought. I mean the thoughts of clarity of mind. So let me ask you, first of all, have you ever felt like that? And do you ever feel motivated to write something? Now you don't necessarily have to post what you write, but do you know the tug that I'm talking about?
I do. I actually have quite a few drafts that are written just for me and not for public consumption. Every once in a while, the need to express myself about certain things will crop up. So I get that 110%.
So, like me, you might write aggressive stuff and then just store it. I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah, no, I find if I can't say what I want to say and I try it 3 times, I'll just shelve it and I'll leave it for the time being until maybe I might feel like revisiting it or not. It
Right,
all depends.
right. You throw that thought into the garden and see if it grows in the
Exactly.
garden of your mind. We're back to that weed thing. No. So then let me ask you this: Thanksgiving in particular. How do you define it as personally as you feel comfortable doing?
How do I define Thanksgiving?
Yeah, how do you define it? How does Aaron William Freeland see Thanksgiving? We know what the intent is, or do we?
Well, I guess it all depends. I mean, there's an overly cynical part of me that remembers blankets that were passed out by a certain nameless Canadian company, and the whole Americanized version of that is um, breaking bread with our our First Nations forebears sort of thing as a way to, there's that whole sanitization of what actually went on. For me, I tend to look upon Thanksgiving more as part of the growing cycle. It's the end really of the growing season here in the Canadian wilderness, as it were, or in Canadian farmland. So that coincides with the harvest, which
Yeah, the
represents a
bounty.
bountiful crop, and you give thanks for having enough food put away for the rest of the year, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That
Horn
I
of
mean,
horn of plenty, horn of plenty, horn of plenty.
exactly. Hey,
And it also should, by definition, you just defined it because that's what it's about. Thanksgiving was invented uh, or came into being as a celebration for the the one of the original groups of migrants that came to this country. This sorry, this North America that came here. The Pilgrims. We refer to them in America as Pilgrims, and they came to this great place that was bountiful, or at least had the it could be bountiful. It was bountiful as far as the native people that were here in this country before we came, and we decided, at least some of us decided, which is an example of what of what we're like, what people are like, human beings are like. We all have different views on how to deal with other people, how to interrelate with other people. No one group fits one pattern. We it's ziggy zaggy, right? So in other words, we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. Both. We don't just have one. Uh, you know. So this is an opportunity, or was an opportunity at least, for some who felt maybe we should get together with the native people and sort of in a way of making some sort of peace, which breaking bread can promote. Um, that's what I guess, if I were to go with my education and what I learned in our schools, that was the purpose of Thanksgiving at its root.
yeah, and it all depends on your obviously your interpretation of it. Many people look at it as an opportunity to express their gratitude for family members and for the advantages that they've been given in life, that sort of thing. And that's all well and good as well. But every person is going to define this particular holiday differently.
Yep.
Some folks may have a less charitable view of it than others, and it's far be it from me to deny them their opinion and how they feel about it. But like I said, it means a different thing to different people. So
So for me, the that which I wrote because I wrote it in the context of thankfulness, right? Gratitude.
yeah,
Um, but also, I think we forget sometimes that along with gratitude, right, comes the opportunity to earn gratitude as well. And it makes you feel good. So for me, Thanksgiving um, is an opportunity to give thanks for the good that's going on in your life, but also promoting good in other people's lives. I like the fact that it's called Thanksgiving. It's a compound word. And both those things are inextricably tied, in my opinion. And that was the reason why I wrote that thing, because it was in one of my emotional states, which I have to act on, because life for me is full of triggers, and sometimes I really believe that for the most part, most people are very, very good. Human beings have a necessity to be good, I think, Aaron.
no argument with me on that one, Frank.
The ones that aren't are clearly identifiable, and and it makes me wonder. I truly do wonder. There's names that they give people like that, but anyway, I don't want to go into the negative side. I just want to stay on the positive. The positive: this is a great weekend to get together with whomever you feel thankful to be around, and it's your opportunity to give um, to people not only that you care about. This is a good time also to give to strangers, to people you don't know, and it doesn't have to be a money. It doesn't have to be gifts. It can just be as simple as a smile, a nod of one's head, and a smile. We've lost that art. There used to be the good old days when we walked by somebody, you would nod your head, and you would acknowledge their existence, right? Now, when we walk through it by people, it's, you know, no eye contact, please. I hope I'm not overstating that.
I don't think so.
Okay, so happy Thanksgiving. I
Happy
won't see you on
Thanksgiving.
Monday. And when I think of the turkey, I'll think of you. Wait a
Perfect.
sec. There was an insult there. I think.
It's
Sorry.
okay. I'm
I
really not
associate
insulted.
turkeys
You
with
know what?
Aaron.
Not
No, I
insulted at
don't.
all.
That was a joke. Okay, so why don't we get into it? We'll get into it by starting with Canada. And the Canadian government has a new person that wants to be an important part of it. His name is Polivier. And what's this about him apologizing for being a misogynist?
Oh no, let's be clear here. He hasn't done any apologizing whatsoever.
Oh, okay, but
Um,
he's still a misogynist, though.
well, there is a hashtag that he has been using on most of his videos,
Ah,
which is MGTOW, which stands for Men Going Their Own Way. And he's been using this for the past 4 or 5 years now here. This hashtag, Men Going Their Own Way, has links to the incel movement and to
oh boy.
followers of Jordan Peterson, and ties with, as a result of being tied to the involuntarily celibate movement, misogynist ties. These hashtags over the past few days have been meticulously scrubbed from all of his videos, but he still hasn't said anything about it being used for the past 4 years or so. Some people are saying it was a staffer that was doing it, but when Pierre first started his YouTube channel, he was, according to 3 or 4 different sources, very hands-on. Nothing went up on that web page, on that YouTube page, without his approval, and
Right.
that includes hashtags. But he hasn't said anything about it, and conveniently, the Conservative Party of Canada has dropped their investigation, saying, "Oh, it's too hard. There's too many videos to look through." Well, we couldn't possibly find the culprit.
You mentioned Jordan Peterson.
Hmm.
He's been in a coma for a short time. His daughter has been, carried his water for a short time. He has a website now. I'm not going to say that he's misunderstood, but I can say that he makes a couple of valid points if one calms down enough to just hear what the points are. Um, the one thing I gleaned from what he says, basically, and this is not fair to do it, and to ask me myself to do it is unfair, and I hope I don't get misunderstood, or if I am, oh well, what can I say? His point is that young men today are starting behind the eight ball, and if I understand him correctly, what he's saying is, with the shift of the economy shifting away from all men, no women. Now that it's shifting, and it's shifting in a direction it should, because women should be, be have the opportunity to, get into work and earn as much as men. Totally correct. But as that shift happens, what I glean from what he says is the constant conversation about that men have advantages over women. One has to admit that the advantages, hopefully, I would hope, if progress is worth anything, that the advantages to men are lessening. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't necessarily say lessening. I would say more rebalancing.
Okay, yeah, it's semantics. At the end of the day, what we're talking about, if this is men and women, we want them to be like that. We don't want them to be like that, right?
Yeah,
As
I
if
mean, rights and
the
advantages
scale's an
aren't
advantage.
like pie. Just because
Okay.
somebody else gets more rights doesn't mean you get less. It's just a
Well, no, I don't want to
rebalancing
get. I don't
sort
want
of
to
thing.
get into that because that's too confusing for me.
Yeah,
That's too confusing for me. What I want to know, and what I want to expect from society is that if two people go for a job, you know, they have an equal opportunity regardless of everything. Any two people have an equal chance to get the job. But this isn't what Jordan Peterson was talking about. And the incel movement that you're talking about are young men who think they'll never have sex because they're not good enough for women.
they're
They,
young men that believe that they're entitled to sex and are angry at women for not giving it to them.
Okay, well, okay, you can say it that way also, but I'm going to disagree with the way you're defining it for the sake of my conversation. What I get from it,
Okay.
what I get from it, what I get from it is basically there are a lot of unhappy young men out there I'm not defending or promoting anything here. But if one assumes that there are a lot of young men are unhappy out there because they feel their lot in life is not as good, and here's the key, Aaron. This is the thing that the point that I gleaned from what Jordan Peterson says, and this is my takeaway, not what he says and not what he believes, but my takeaway is that if you tell a group of people they're favored, they have a better life, they're treated better, and they're still poor and have nothing, how do you think they should react? How should that
Uh,
individual react? You're
Again,
telling
this
me
wasn't a debate that I was prepared to have today, Frank. So I really can't
that,
respond to that.
okay, okay.
But
My simple point is that the problem with everything that we do that's wrong as a society, in other words, generalizing. When we generalize, when we accuse people of something just because of what their name is, what they look like, where they're from, what sex they are. When we generalize about people, when we label people, that's wrong. And I get the feeling, what I glean from what he says, what Peterson says, is that there are people under that label that don't deserve to be there, and the message being delivered to those people under that label is not something that we can assume is right. That we have to understand that it's more complicated. The world is far more complicated. No, you mentioned his name, and he was actually the last thing I saw of his. He was crying in an interview with what's his name? Oh, it doesn't matter. He was crying at an interview because an actress called him a terrible name, called him a horrible thing that made him feel about that big. I'm not defending his pain. I'm not saying that the woman, the actress, I remember her name now. I don't remember her name. But anyway, hurting people to me, when I saw that, I said to myself, wow, he's really hurting. And he's not the kind of guy that I would consider being able to be hurt. And this is the label thing I'm talking about. To suggest somebody like he's a guy who's inflamed a lot of people and upset a lot of people, Aaron, and it came to my seeing him sad and cry, saying to myself, that's not the label I would have put on that guy. Crying is not what I would have thought of him. I would have thought of him being cold, calculated, commentary that he doesn't care how it impacts on other people. So you wouldn't think that it would impact on him. And that's the lesson I learned. And why I said I was trying to, it made me want to understand what he was trying to say a little harder, because I saw how, and assuming it wasn't acting, assuming it was um, sincere pain, it triggered me wanting to understand him better. So that's just what I was trying to say, is that this guy says stuff that a lot of people don't like. Um, but I know a lot of people who say things I don't like, but that doesn't mean I'm going to cancel the idea that I can listen to them and see what they have to say. I even every so often, Aaron, I tune into Fox TV, Fox News, every so often, just to sort of to cleanse my palate a little bit. And I find sometimes I hear things I need to know everywhere. In other words, we need to be more open minded. And I didn't like the fact that he was personally attacked the way he was. Um, and that I don't think that's justified either. But like I said, you mentioned him. You talked about Poliver, who is someone who is along those same lines, where he's speaking to people that we may not understand, but he's speaking to them and they're hearing him. And what we need to do as people, whether you like somebody or not, is try to understand what their message is and try to understand the people who are hearing that message and what they're gleaning from it, what they're hearing. And it's important that we do that, Aaron. And that's all. Is like Poliver, I'm not really well versed on him. I'll get to know him better as he moves on. But he's a guy that I know by your conversations and your notes that you're a little concerned with his leadership.
yes, I am.
Yeah, I get that. Now I'm not saying you don't have any concerns, but But I'm going to be paying attention. Let me tell you, because if he's planning to be the leader in Canada, I want to make sure that that I can support him, or it just might impress upon me the importance of supporting someone else, which is the way life seems to work. It seems right. What is it? Enemy of your enemy is your friend.
Yeah,
I,
that's the commonly used phrase.
right? Something like that. Okay, Health Canada approves Pfizer BioNTech. This is the Omicron vaccine, the booster. We were just talking about that. My girlfriend and I were just talking about whether we're going to get it or not.
Excellent. I know my parents have already had their third, and they're considering going for their fourth when they're eligible. Health Canada did actually approve yesterday the use of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 booster that targets the BA.5 and BA.4 strains of the Omicron variant. Now, it's been approved for people who are 12 years old and up. They believe that they are going to have enough supply of the bivalent vaccine to cover the anticipated demand for fall boosters. This goes along with your flu shot. So just because you're getting the COVID vaccine, don't forget to get your flu shot as well. Just to make sure that your vaccines are currently up to date. Everybody needs to do everything they possibly can to make sure that they stay healthy. I have a couple friends that are long haulers, and it's not fun.
Uh, uh, you know, um, One of the things that's eventually going to happen is I'm going to get the flu shot. Um, Eventually, what's going to happen, I think, the Omicron, or it's going to all become part of the flu shot. I can see that in our future.
Well, I
It's
certainly
not.
hope they can roll it all into a multi-shot package, as
It would.
one
It
shot
would
as
be.
opposed to.
It would be. As long as it's safe and they keep testing it, and the longer it's around, the more they'll know what is good or bad about it. So that's an important move for some people who want to get the booster. So it's available, and it's your fourth shot. Canada labor market still tight. Still tight. The economy is a little difficult right now, Aaron.
It is, unfortunately. However, the unemployment rate did fall again by another 0.2% between August and September. They added another 21,000 jobs. Now, this usually combines. This is usually concurrent and goes along with the return of children to school, because all of those individuals who are laid off during the course of the summer, teachers and assistants and classroom assistants and whatnot, tend to come back. And again, this is expected, but it's still a positive sign. The unfortunate thing is this seems to have negatively affected the stock markets in the States. Unemployment dropped, and as a result, apparently the stock market dropped significantly as well, which is confusing to me because normally the stock market is supposed to be a bellwether of how well the economy is doing. Unemployment goes down, more people are working, and all of a sudden the stock market drops, and it's like maybe somebody's been lying to us about this whole thing all along.
I do not. I am not a financial expert, but I do know history has shown me that while people have suffered, the stock has done well. So why would you assume that the stock doing well necessarily means people are doing well? And why would you assume on the inverse, which is if people are doing well, why should stocks do well? What they're saying is in this one here, is that for this to be the stock market to be better, there needs to be more unemployment. It's the interest rates that are the major problem with the stock market, because what interest rates do is the big money gets affected. The debt that companies have, the money they borrow. The housing market already is taking a tumble because, I call it the post-pandemic situation. This has a lot to do with the pandemic we went through, in combination with historically every so often we end up in a I guess a reset, Aaron. I don't know what else to call it. This is a predictable thing that happens through time, right? This is not the first bout with inflation that we're having. It's
No,
happened before.
this is simply a light correction. It's not anything to be drastically concerned about. But again, it's this oddly inverse relationship between employment, and the closer you get to full employment, the worse the stock market does, sort of feel.
No, no, it's the interest rates. The employment. Listen, really in a better place, in a world that I'd like to see, that I think would be better looking back at my old age, is if income was enough to feed a family. Okay, I'm not saying one we can't go back to those days where there was one wage earner and that was enough for the whole family. Two people who are working two separate jobs earn enough to pay a mortgage, put food on the table, and have a little wiggle room. Isn't that what Biden says? I like that thing that he says. Basically, a little bit extra. In other words, what he's saying and what I believe, and I agree with him, is that people shouldn't be stressed out for their next bill to be paid. Right? I
No,
mean,
it's true.
when we're talking about eating and where you sleep, come on, man, that's not. Oh, now I'm beginning to sound like him. Forget it. Okay, so I'm gonna stop doing that. Let me tell you, people will start questioning whether I've been around since the beginning of time. Let's talk a little bit about the Canadian labor market you were just talking about. I think we pretty much touched it. Do you want to ratchet that one down?
Yeah, I mean, basically, look at it this way: the situation is improving. We're continuing to add jobs. That's not a bad thing. Um, Things are still touch and go. The housing market's still going to be fluctuating. But what we are currently seeing is what typically happens around this time of year, which is a small market correction. So it's not the end of the world. It's just something to be aware of. And as time goes on, job figures should continue to improve as we get more towards Christmas and more seasonal employees get taken on. So not necessarily a bad thing.
The newest premier in Canada, this one of Alberta, consider it this fist, is talking about the federal government and doing a bit of this.
Yep. This is Danielle Smith, who is her starting her first day as the incoming Alberta premier. She's had a lot of work to do because she basically bailed on the Wild Rose Party in 2014 and nearly caused that party's collapse when crossing the floor to join the Conservatives and helping Kenny kick off the United Conservative Party. Um, Basically, this is the same lady who proposed Alberta seceding from Canada as part of reworking their constitutional relationship. She's basically said, look, as long as Trudeau stays in his lane and lets us do what we need to do in order to manage our own resources, which are Alberta's and nothing to do with Canada, we'll get along just fine.
And she has made it very clear that she's going to do her best to ignore any of the leadership from the federal government when it comes to the oil industry.
Yeah.
Well, right now, with Canada having and Alberta having the third highest amount of oil, I don't know, Aaron. I'm not agreeing with Danielle, but I am going to say that we're at the point now where, man, it's about the baby. King Solomon. Remember the two mothers that wanted the baby, and the one mother said, "Let's cut it in half," and the other mother said, "No, you keep the baby. Whoever you want to give it to that one." Um, I think the oil industry, the energy sector, um, dealing with what we learned yesterday, the United Arab Emirates, they have decided to lessen the amount of oil that they produce. We talked about, you know, the fact that there's inflation and it's going to contribute drastically to that. I'm I'm kind of, we've got we've got two problems. The baby for me is the environment and democracy and or the way you and I live here, where we live here. And it's at stake now. There's a good chance because if America gets away from this gets away from democracy, it won't take long till we follow, right? So now
No,
the
it's true. And
the
we don't see everything lean Russiawards when it comes to oligarchs ruling everything
hell
as opposed
no.
to the rule of actual democracy. So it's a genuine concern.
So now we've got a baby. The baby is the environment or the energy sector not being used to by Putin, whom I think we can agree is a bit of a what's the word dick. It might be a word I'm looking for. Um, it's this is King Solomon's decision. Do we risk setting back the environment a little more for a little more time so that the energy sector in Alberta can sell more oil to the world, offsetting what is going on around the world, namely with what is it, OPEC plus? That's the one the Russians are in, right?
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are deciding they're going to turn the spigot down a little bit. And we know what that means. They've already got $7 a gallon gas in California.
Well, I mean, we'll have to see how this all plays out, especially with her promise from back in June to immediately introduce the Alberta Sovereignty Act. I know that a lot of constitutionalists have already tried to shoot that down, but we'll see if she actually presses forward with that, despite the opposition of Rachel Notley and the NDP there. So we'll
And
have to see
don't
what
forget,
happens.
on this topic of Alberta, don't forget, our prime minister was willing to turn on that pipeline. It was ended by Biden when he first came in, right?
Yep. And
And
that pipeline was bought as a result of FIPA with China, which allowed them to sue Canada should there be issues with performance and financial issues. So that was a 30-year agreement that was put in place by Stephen Harper before he left power. So Trudeau kind of got backed into it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You're saying the reason why he agreed. You're saying that was the motivation for him to agree. He couldn't disagree.
Exactly.
Because there were promises made.
Exactly. By a previous government, which unfortunately has been thrown back on him.
Party.
It is what it is.
Party. And a different party.
Yep.
But okay, I don't want to get in the weeds too far. My simple point is, again, it's Sophie's choice. The environment or how we live. I'm all for the environment, and I'm guilty of cutting a tree down in my front yard. But that was after a big branch on it, because the tree was not in good health, landed on my house and cost me $3,000 in repairs. So the environment matters. It always matters. It always matters in my mind. But I also know that sometimes the environment can take a back seat to a certain situation. I'm not here to define that situation, but that's all I'm saying. And right now, Alberta producing more oil would be a good thing in one regard, bad in the other. The question is, which do we want to support or put up with? However you want to define it. I'm okay with them producing a bunch of oil to get that guy out of business. If they can take that guy out of business, but Alberta needs to know we're going to get away from oil. We have to. And they've got to do something with the money that they earn that helps their industry base change. Maybe use that money that they make with the oil to make things that are more future environmentally friendly, I guess. I don't know, Aaron, but it seems hard to push with people who know they got oil. Why would they want to do anything else? You can't blame them for thinking the way they do.
No, not in the slightest. If it's readily available, we'll worry about when it runs out.
Well, or when the sky falls.
Well, that too.
Just remember, Aaron, our favorite movie. Don't look up. Don't look up. Don't look up. The Canadian Labor... Sorry, I already did that. So British Columbia, BC signs new climate agreement. Here we go with California, Oregon, and Washington.
So John Horgan has signed a new climate pact with Washington, Oregon, California that includes investments in cross-border climate infrastructure like electric vehicle charging stations. This statement of cooperation that they've released also aims to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy and to protect communities from climate disasters, including droughts, wildfires, and heat waves. Now, these four jurisdictions have different climate agendas, but they share the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 80% by the year 2050. This is very important because BC and California are currently suffering through a wildfire and drought season. It's significant there. Washington and Oregon, of course, bordering states to that tire fire, as it were. So having the West Coast united like that with a new climate pact is a good thing.
And that's why there's a lot of pressure on climate issues, because there are some places that are suffering irreparable and continuous damage that seems endless and or getting worse. That's exactly. After I said the thing about the oil thing, right? You see, that's why it's Sophie's friggin' choice. Okay, so Miles Sanderson in Saskatchewan, the man that knifed a bunch of people to death, turns out his brother was also a victim.
Yeah, according to the RCMP in a news conference yesterday, they said that they believe that Miles did all of the killing and that Damien was one of his victims. But in order to throw police off, he brought his body along and then dumped it to confuse the case. They can't really get into a lot of specifics about that because they're still currently investigating that.
Absolutely. That's a real sad situation. Here in Ontario, Ford tells education workers who voted in favor of strike, don't force my hand.
Yeah, well, he's waving the bully stick after having done absolutely nothing over the course of the past 6 months to actually try to resolve this. Education employees have been without a contract legitimately since June 1st. Um, so CUPE announced earlier this week that its members, those include early childhood educators, custodians, and administratorial staff, not necessarily teachers, those individuals, ECE custodians and admin staff, have voted 96.5% in favor of a strike if they can't get anything done. This puts the teachers who are under a different union going back to work in a very difficult position because if there's no custodians or administrative staff, this makes their jobs harder as well. Now, CUPE is set to go back to the table again on Friday with the government. And those two today, that means today and tomorrow, those 2 days of talks are going to be instrumental in laying this out. The government on their side has offered raises of 2% a year for workers making less than 40 grand and 1.25% for all other workers, while CUPE is looking for annual increases of 11.7%. So there is a fair bit of ground to cover here before they can meet in the middle.
Boy.
Yeah.
Now, in Quebec, election campaign violence leads to 31 people being arrested.
Yeah. Francois Legault set up an emergency hotline for candidates because of a high number of threats that were made against politicians during the campaign. There were a total of 66 charges laid, including 47 for crimes against a person and 19 for property-related offenses. There were actually 217 reports filed, but several were turned out to be unfounded or were not retained because they involved simply derogatory comments that weren't criminal in nature. Now, there are other investigations that do currently remain open, but people have to understand you have freedom of expression, but you don't have freedom from consequences. So while it's great that you can shoot your mouth off online and that sort of thing, you do have to realize that you're not going to get away with this scot-free, especially if it's derogatory, defamatory, threatening, or abusive.
Or breaking the law.
Most of those fall under that category.
No, I'm just saying, in case you
Yeah.
missed anything, or breaking the law. I was just sort of putting a little net around it. Biden offers pardons for possession of marijuana. There are people who are still in jail after 20 something years, Aaron. It's about time for this. It was a campaign promise he made.
It was, and a lot of people are very happy to see that going forward. There are, like, this decision could potentially impact more than 6,500 people with federal convictions. He also wants state governors to consider a similar move at the state level, where the numbers are obviously vastly higher for that sort of thing. He's also called for an administrative review of why cannabis remains a Schedule One substance, a classification that includes drugs like heroin and LSD. Um,
Absolutely.
so he,
He's asked that to be the appropriate organization under him. We'll be looking into that and reclassifying marijuana. Especially the other thing, folks. The reason why this is important in America, us Canadians, we have it, we can buy it, and people who have, you know, we've known for years. There's some people who believe and have shown that it's helped them on different health reasons, health improvements in their lives by using the oil, not necessarily smoking it. But anyway, yeah, there's some helpful things in it. So it's about time. Let's go over to sports with our last, I guess, almost 10 minutes, a little more than 10 minutes we've got. I'm excited, Aaron. I am so excited. In a short time, in a few minutes, a baseball game is going to start. It's a playoff game. It's the Blue Jays, and they're at home, and they play the whole series at home. Best two out of three, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Are you as excited as I am?
I actually have the game on in the background right now, Frank.
It's
We're
going
it,
already.
yeah, it started at 4:07 this afternoon.
Oh, I was busy doing this. So
I know.
you want
Um,
to you want to talk about it?
I certainly can. It's not looking good right now. Unfortunately, Alek Manoah stumbled out of the gate. The Jays found themselves down 3-0 after the first inning. He threw about 100 pitches, managed to get himself into the fifth inning before being pulled. Currently, Trevor Richards is on the mound. J.P. Crawford is batting. But it's currently 4-0 in the top of the ninth. The
Oh,
Jays should be going up shortly, but right now, Seattle's sitting at 99% on the win probability meter. So it's like I said, not looking good. But
I'm
it
not
is
as
the first
excited
of three.
anymore, Aaron. I'm not as excited anymore.
We still have two more games though, and they're all at home, which is absolutely fantastic for us because we get home cooking all the way through.
This is bad because this was the best chance they had to win.
Well, it's still winnable. Not this game, but the series is because it's 3 games. It's not a one and done like it was in years past. So there's small comfort in that.
That's right. The game started at 4. I thought only the game tomorrow started at 4.
Yeah, no, there's been some confusion and some complaints about the start time as well, just because it would mean a lot of people would be taking a hit to their productivity at work because they'd be leaving early to head down to the game. Um,
Yeah, a lot of illness, a lot of blue flu.
Yeah, well, actually, we got an email from one of our higher ups today saying, "Hey, we encourage everyone to show their support for the Blue Jays by taking off an extra half hour early so that you can catch more of the game." But yeah,
What work
today's
until
game is at 4:07. Tomorrow's game is at 4:07, and the third game, if necessary, I believe would be at 12 on Sunday.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for it. We're running low on time. The next most important thing to talk about is the Maple Leafs. We covered them all year, and things are going interestingly for them.
Indeed, it's one of those. It's one of those situations where this division all of a sudden looks a lot better than it did, and a lot tighter than it did.
It was
Um,
already too good.
right? It's already a fire wagon of a division. Now all of a sudden, I mean, Boston was fourth last year, but they've improved a little bit. Buffalo has picked up Ilya Lyobushkin, Eric Comrie, and Riley Sheehan. Um, they've lost Cody Eakin, Dustin Tokarski, and Drake Caggiula, but it's a young team. They re-signed Tage Thompson to a monster deal.
Yeah.
The Detroit Red Wings have added Kopp, Ben Sherratt, Ali Mata, Ville Husso, David Perron, and Dominic Kubalik, so they've improved. Florida has added Matthew Tkachuk and Nick Cousins, not to mention Michael Delzato and Mark Stahl. So there's more improvements for them. The Montreal Canadiens are winless so far, but that's just the preseason. They've added Sean Monahan, Kirby Dach, Evgeny Dadonov, Alex DeBrincat has gone to Ottawa. Claude
Yep.
Giroux is there. Cam Talbot is unfortunately out for 4 to 6 weeks, but they've significantly improved as well. The Tampa Bay Lightning are going to continue to do their magic, barely squeak into the postseason and then run table again. I have this weird feeling. They've added Nemestikov, Hayden Fleury, and Philippe Myers. Unfortunately, they've lost Palat, McDonough, Nash, and Jan Ruda, but they're still strong. Maple Leafs, hey, we've added Matt Murray. He's looked absolutely fantastic for us. We've added Ilya Samsonov. Again,
They're saying that I saw a report
going.
that he's the next Campbell.
Well, somebody's got to be the next Campbell because Jack's no longer with us. But I mean, we also added Nicholas Aubé-Kubel from the Avalanche, Calle Yarncroke from the Seattle Kraken, Jordy Ben, Zach Aston-Reese, and Adam Gaudette. So these are all adds that help make Toronto stronger. But it's the toughest division in hockey just got tougher. Is basically what it boils down to.
Bunting.
Yeah, Bunting and Kampf, like it's one of those. Those guys are going to be fun for us too.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting playoff. I got to say, just to go back to the baseball, just for this purpose, to talk about the way they do the playoffs, I like their playoff better because what it does is it gets rid of the weaker leader in the other division, which I think would help the Leafs and the rest of the teams in that division. where you don't have a team. It didn't quite work out that way last year. But where you end up having points actually matter, not just where you fit in a division.
Yeah, no, I'm actually enjoying that. I personally would have loved to have seen a crossover rule, um, where it within the division, within the conference. Sorry, I would have liked to have seen a crossover rule between the divisions.
Well, you're
Or
coming close to saying put all the teams in that conference together, and the top 8 get in.
it's
But I would
really the
like
way it should be done.
what I would like to see is I'd like to see an extra playoff series, just like they're doing in Major League Baseball, to get more
That would
teams
be
in.
fun.
That would be very interesting. In other words, 7 and 8 play 9 and 10. I don't know if you'd want to go any further than that, but I don't think you'd want to go 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't think you'd want to do that, but it would be interesting, and more teams in the playoffs means more excitement down the road for all the teams. Which for Leaf fans and Montreal fans and New York Ranger fans, the teams and towns that they fill the arena no matter what. Maybe that isn't that important to them, but it is important to teams that need to have that excitement, right? That draws the fans to come out. And then having said that about the teams like Toronto, New York, etc., nothing makes it better that if you're going to the game that it matters, right? That it matters. So that's what we want to see with sports. And the longer they can make a season matter, I think, Aaron, the better.
True. Another sign actually that there are better times ahead is um, New Jersey has actually started selling wine to season seat members. It goes from anywhere from $55 to $240 a bottle.
Wow.
Um, uh, it's just a sign that the cap is going up, so they got to make more money to cover it.
Well,
So
there
that to
were
me,
projections of the cap going up, but it wasn't monumental amounts. It was maybe a couple of million a year, if they're lucky, right?
yeah,
So, in 5 years, that's $10 million more. But you can't look at it as having $10 more million to spend on Austin Matthews. But
well,
that it's going to be interesting. He's only got a couple of years left in the contract, and there's some concern in Leaf circles that he may not stay. But he talks about how much he loves this place. But we've heard that from athletes before on the way out the door.
yeah, we certainly have. I mean, Oh, by the way, in an interesting side note, Connor McDavid is no longer the highest paid player in the NHL.
Yeah, no kidding. He's at the Tim Hortons with Sidney Crosby.
Supplementing his income that way because hey, Nathan McKinnon is now the highest paid player in the NHL, so more power to him.
I guess he probably bought the coffee.
It's possible.
Hey, do you think he could afford to buy the coffee? Yeah, they're still doing the commercials. Great, great commercials. Let's talk about in other interests to Canadians. We have the MLS and Vancouver and Montreal. Did Vancouver get eliminated yet?
I think they're on the cusp of being eliminated. Yeah.
So we have just Montreal in there. Montreal, great team. They're doing a great job, and you know, uh, I talked to. Well, anyway, I can tell you that in MLS circles, as far as Toronto FC is concerned, it's been a very disappointing season, and we'll see if that changes for them. For, of course, Vancouver, very close. They may or may not make it. You're right; they're on the cusp. I don't remember exactly how many inches are out or how many inches are in, but I do know that they're hanging in there. Let's talk a bit about the NBA. The NBA is also starting. The Toronto Raptors had a victory. Aaron, this team goes across Canada and they sold out in Edmonton. They sell out wherever they go. They really are Canada's team, and people in Canada are saying it by buying tickets to the games that they have outside of Toronto.
I'm very glad to see that they are doing as well as they have, especially when it comes to games outside. I mean, they did beat Boston 125 to 119 in overtime. That was actually a lot of fun to see. But yeah, the building blocks are there. We're just hoping that the rookies that they picked up can continue to make advancements. Their sophomore players like Precious Achua and a few others can continue to progress and develop.
Okay, we'll make that the last word. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Frank.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Aaron Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.